Welcome back to On the Fly. We're previewing the predicting and recapping World Junior Championships, our Men's World Championships, the Women's World Championship, the U18 Men's World Championship. Expect the unexpected.
Absolute abomination of the Canadian Junior Nationals.
I have a couple extra words I want to use in that one. And it's Freebird. Freebird, Freebird, Freebird. Of course, the Olympics are just around the corner. I'm going to coin it the rivalry day.
World Junior history!
Your home for international hockey. This is On the Fly. Hello everyone, welcome back to On the Fly. Today we're previewing the team representing Canada at the 2026 Women's Olympic Hockey event. So we'll hop into today talking a little bit about the history of this Canadian team at the Olympics, and one that's quite frankly been dominant. And think back, outside of the inaugural tournament back in 1998, they followed it up with 5 gold medals and a silver. They also won silver back in 1998. And it's going to be another year for this Canadian team where I expect that to continue. Yes, there's been a little bit of adversity when you look back to the rivalry series where they were outscored 24-7 against the U.S. team. Think to the Women's Worlds where they did lose to the U.S. But it's another tournament where it likely will still be between Canada and the U.S. You can include the Czechs in there this year. There'll be a kind of a kicking around team. I don't think they have what it takes quite yet to upset Canada, but they're definitely on the road to do so in the next few years. But once again, likely not going to be this tournament we're going to see it. So for Canada, it's really about, it's all going to come down to that game that matters. It's going to come down to that first game in that round robin to set the tone for the eventual gold medal. And so for this Canadian team, I expect that to be a point of emphasis for them because they are looking for gold this year. And it's another year of this Olympic tournament where they are a gold or bust team. And you think to their roster composition this year, which we'll get to in a few minutes, a lot of returning players from the gold medal winning 2022 Olympic team, where, of course, you have 16 players of the 23 total coming back, as well as your top 2 goaltenders who basically led you to that gold medal. So for Canada, a huge year for them this year, and we'll see if they're able to pull it off. But we'll introduce you now to the team. We'll start here with the forwards with Laura Stacey, Sarah Fillier, Brianne Jenner, Sarah Nurse, Natalie Spooner, Emily Clark, Emma Malte, Marie-Philippe Poulin, Blair Turnbull, Kristen O'Neill, Julia Gosling, Jen Gardner, and Daryl Watts. Then the defense we go with Sophie Jakes, Jocelyn LaRock, Katie Tabin, Renata Fast, Ella Shelton, Erin Ambrose, and Claire Thompson. Then to the goaltenders with Anne-Renee Desbiens, Emrance Mashmeyer, and Kaylee Osborne. And so when we look at this team, obviously lots of players that we all know and love, especially some classic favorites. And no one better to start than Marie-Philippe Poulin, who is, of course, Captain Canada, and you might also call her Captain Clutch. She scored in every single gold medal game she's played in coming into this tournament. And so I expect that to be it's going to continue into this tournament as well. In those big moments, there's certain players you look to, and she is certainly one of them. Another player you're going to really look for is Daryl Watts, who's kind of been on the rise these last few IIHF Women's Worlds, a new player to the Canadian Olympic team, but one that is going to be a staple for years to come. And so be on the lookout for her. She'll be a really important player, especially on the goal scoring side for this Canadian team. And then we'll move to the defense now. And it's really a take your pick. And there were, of course, Chloe Primerano not on this team, which was a bit of a surprise to some, but it's the certain composition of this year's team that I think is more of an experienced veteran core that is kind of what they've been playing for since the last Olympics. You've seen it at the IIHF Women's Worlds, where that has kind of been the trend. They haven't really switched over to the young side of the talent pool. You see that as well with the addition of the PWHL as well, where you have your top end players continuing to play through the season, which is obviously a huge deal for the development of these players, but also making sure they're ready and roaring to go for puck drop. And so I think this year in particular, you're going to see that effect of the PWHL really take some notice on this Canadian team in particular, because every single player on this Canadian team is from the PWHL. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. We'll see what the impact is, especially for that first game where they're going to come up against the Finns, where, it's typically an interesting game, typically more on the blowout side against the Finnish team, but still going to be an interesting one there. And then the goaltenders as well, 2 goaltenders that led you to the gold medal in 2022. We'll see if they can do the same this year. Anne-Renee Desbiens, Emirates Mashmeyer, likely going to be your starter backup. Kaylee Osborne, kind of the back of the third string. I don't see her taking Mashmeyer's spot, but still early. It's really hard to tell, especially this early on. It also depends on how the camps go, and we'll see closer to game time which goaltender likely has that backup spot. But Desbiens going to be the starter for this Canadian team. I would be shocked to see anything otherwise, barring any last-minute injuries or any of that sort. But as of this current moment, expect Desbiens to start, and this Canadian team is going to go quite far this year, and it's going to be a good team. You have a lot of experience, and we'll see if that translates into some success. Then we'll move on to the schedule for this Canadian team. As we just mentioned, they will start against Finland on February the 5th at 3:10 p.m. Eastern Time, followed up against the Swiss on February the 7th, Czechs on February the 9th at 3:10 p.m. Eastern, and then the USA in their marquee matchup coming up on February the 11th at 2:10 p.m. Eastern. Then they'll go on to the quarterfinals. A reminder that every team in Group A does make it on to the quarterfinal round. It's still the staggered groups. The last year of it at this Women's Olympics, the Women's Worlds just shifted away from it as well. So this will essentially be the last year we see the staggered format at the Olympics. And so the way the quarterfinals work is A1 plays B3, A2 plays B2, A3 plays B1, and then A4 and A5 play each other in the quarters. All teams are reseeded following, of course, the quarterfinals, which moves us into the semifinals on February the 16th, where you'll likely see Canada play your pick of Czechia, Finland, and Sweden. I expect the Finns to be able to beat the Swiss. I expect the Czechs at this tournament to be able to beat the Finns. And then from there, the quarterfinals, where you'll likely see between the Czechs, the Swedes, who are two teams on the rise. The Swedes, I don't know if they can beat the Czechs quite yet. It's an unfortunate part of the staggered groups. But if the Finns get up into that third spot, are able to beat the Czechs in the prelims, there is a potential for the Swedes to beat Finland, especially this year. We saw it already at the most recent Women's Worlds, where that game got real close real quick. We'll see if it continues into this year's Olympics. February 16th for the semis. Then to the medal games we go. February 19th at 8:40 a.m. Eastern Time for the bronze. 1:10 p.m. Eastern as well for the gold medal game, where you can expect Canada to be in it, likely playing against their longtime rivals in the U.S., but it's still going to be a great game. And whenever these two countries play each other, it's always fireworks. And we just made our U.S. team preview yesterday, so if you have not already, be sure to go check that out. But what I'd say is the U.S. this year is still the favorite for gold. And you can look at the rivalry series, where it was a lot of the same team that we're seeing now. You can look at the Women's Worlds, where they just took gold. This U.S. team has a lot of momentum riding into this tournament. It'll be very interesting to see whether or not they are able to kind of break through. And for Canada, you look at their schedule, there's two kind of important key games for them early in this tournament. First game is against the Czechs on the 9th. If they can win that game and kind of set the tone for what's to come and kind of cruise through that game, they'll be okay in this tournament. But one especially game against the Czechs, it can go either way in a real quick flip-flop, because this Czech team is certainly on the rise. It'll be very interesting to see kind of how this game ends up playing out. And then, of course, the marquee matchup between the U.S. It's always a good game, and likely will give them the easier seed, whether it be the Finns, whether it be the Swedes in the semis. And so that is a big game to play for. And so for Canada, you want to win that game for not only to get the easier seed and avoid having to likely end up playing the Czechs, but also have the ability to then not have to worry about losing that momentum early on, and because you're going to play the U.S. team most likely in the gold. And so losing the first one kind of gives that a little bit of a shaky mentality going into the gold medal game, but still an interesting game, an interesting team this year for Canada. And then from there, we'll see if they can go all the way. But for Canada this year, poised for a deep run, and we'll see if they can pull off the gold. If you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you're really serious, subscribing, tell all your friends, comment down below your thoughts on Team Canada. Until next time, see you.